they'll be calling you a radical here at the most underutilized building maybe in the world. It's always empty, aka the Damian Lillard Workout Center. It used to be, not anymore, but never gets used. So this is the day. So today is the day, the greatest performance by an athlete in modern history. Well, at least since Jim Thorpe in 1912. So this is it. For all you young athletes, winning matters, but you have to get there, right? You have to get there. And, you know, these high school coaches and, you know, I'm all great athlete. Fuck, it's so pathetic. These coaches will ruin you. I just had this conversation with my grandsons. You know, they're athletes, unbelievable, and these coaches are morons. They don't know shit, and, like, take a couple years off. Michael Jordan got cut off his high school team. High school sports is not where it's at. You want to develop as a player, you need to, you know. A lot of luck involved. Well, a lot of bloodlines involved. Politics, you know. And it's about situational basketball. Look, once you get there, these games come down. It's so highly competitive. It comes down to a coaching or a decision by a player. That's where champions are made. Michael Jordan, Michael Jordan, Michael Jordan, Michael Jordan. 25 years ago today, the greatest performance by an athlete. I was at that game. I'm sitting right across from him on a Sunday. Scottie, and I love Scottie Pippen running his mouth. Just throw this game in his face when he runs his mouth. He had back spasm. He was a zero burger. Michael Jordan beat two of the greatest players in history. And if that doesn't prove you, Stockton and Malone, you think about it as a coach. You have Stockton and Malone on your team, and you do not fly banners. Let Phil Johnson, who coached their coach, Stockton and Malone. He probably got 4 or 5 of them. It comes down to situation because it's that they're that good. So you go back to that game. Michael Jordan, they scored 87 points. You know Michael Jordan had 45, not to mention his 3 or 4 steals. The steal's the biggest play probably in NBA history. Everybody thinks about the shot. So he waited the whole series. How did Post Malone get his freaking name? So they Post Malone. Rightfully so on that play. I mean, the game he had before, Karl Malone's greatest game he ever played in Chicago. So they Post Malone. Jordan doubles back all the way around. I'm at the game. Gets behind him and steals the ball. It's the greatest steal in NBA history, and that's saying a lot, John Stockton. You can't win with John Stockton and freaking Karl. Well, it's like here. You can't win with Damian Lillard, Jerry Cardi, Joe Ballboy, Dylan Jones, and they can't. It's coaching. It's situational basketball. It comes down, these games are that nuance. Who's the coach of that team? Michael Jordan. You know, Phil Jackson just went around for the ride. He was smart enough, but who really coached that team? Well, Phil Jackson was smart enough to let. I was at all those games. I watched it down there. When they called timeout, no, the coach was Michael. Go ask Steve Kerr. You know, go ask him. So you got to win. The greatest performance by an athlete in modern history since Jim Thorpe at the 1912 Olympics. Oh, it's 25 years ago. It's Michael Jordan. The GOAT, him, Bill Russell, Kareem. I say those are your top 3. You can argue. You know, LeBron's going to go way up there. We'll see but he's still playing. You know, we can't evaluate. That's why the old days it used to be a big gap because you have to sit and be able to reflect. Well, we've had 25 years to reflect on this. I was at that game. I'll tell you a great story. Nobody knows, hardly anyone knows this story. Dennis Rodman was all that. Give Karl Malone fits. He tried to. So, after the game, Jordan doubles back, steals the ball, comes out. I'm telling this game's up. There was still time on the clock. Of course, Jordan hits the shot. Why would Jerry Sloan have Russell guarding him? Russell was a very mediocre player. I don't know why they put him. You know, you had Chris Morris sitting on the bench, who Jordan even said later I had trouble getting over top of him. You know, Chris Morris was the guy. But, of course, again, situation, personalities coming in. Didn't like him. Well, isn't that sports for you? Isn't that high school? Isn't that junior high? Isn't that's what college? That's what it is anymore? That's why the losers like that don't win. But when they let personalities get involved, ask Stephon Curry's father about Jerry Sloan. Ask Shannon Anderson. Ask Chris Morris, all these great players that he destroyed. Randy Ray did the same thing here. When you can't win with freaking Damian Lillard was ahead by 23 points in the halftime of in the second half of the Big Sky Championship. I was doing the play-by-play. The number one free throw shooter in the country, and you lose? Is that even possible? All you got to do is just keep the ball in Damian Lillard's hand. Well, the coach was that stupid situation, but he was the worst I ever saw. The new guy's the same thing. They lose in double over. It's pathetic. Phil Johnson would have coached the Jazz, they would have had rings. Jerry Sloan was the most predictable. He was the most anal. You got to be creative. You got to be dynamic, which Michael Jordan was. So he hits the shot. There's still time. People forget this. There's still time. Time out. Of course, everybody in the world knows they're going to go to Stockton and he's going to try to shoot a three. That's all Sloan did at the end of every game. Well, they were ready. He couldn't get over it. He tried, but he didn't get an open look. I mean, they got a face like this. The Bulls. I mean, talk about the capitulation. Why would you rip that team to shreds? They won anything else since? Is the capitulation to culture. Basketball metaphors matter. So after the game, they're setting up the stage. Of course, the Jazz fans are we're used to it. It's gone all over all those years, those great Jazz teams. From 1985 to 2000, the Jazz had the highest winning percentage in any franchise in the world. But they always lost. 2-seed out, George Karl outcoached into the little lineup twice. Well, that's the Jazz. Well, when you play in the energy solutions, that's nuclear waste. What do you think this one's? Who built this? The nuclear energy, the water's cursed. So, after the game, they're setting up the stage. Rodman does his usual, pulls off his shirt, comes out, flexing, doing his thing. He walks right up there. Everybody's cleared out. Nobody wants to watch it. People are that pissed, distraught. Of course, I stayed around to watch the ceremony. There's a group of us, and we're in Lower Bowl when we go down. Guy I know here from Ogden, this dude's got arms. This guy's a beast. He walks up, and Jordan's flexing right over, being a punk, and he went threw that whole beer right in freaking Rodman's face. So Rodman has two bodyguards with him that work for the Bulls. They come up. This dude rips his shirt off. Says, "Come, you should have seen those bodyguards." They turned around and ran, literally. So here comes the old geezer beer police at that scumbag Delta Center. The Big Tin Drum, when we had the Salt Palace, where everybody said it was the best acoustics. Larry Bird says the most beautiful, but it wasn't big enough. 12,000 is not enough. Why don't you put them in 80,000 arenas? Well, that'll be the next thing. We turn down arenas and build an even bigger dumb tin drums that hold 50,000. Oh, they do that. Let's play the NCAA championship in the Silver Dome. It's pathetic. And so there's those old 100-year-old geezers. They're all volunteers. Did you know they use volunteers? Now think about the cheap ass Jazz. The billionaire, they're the BYU Jazz now. And so those guys are like, And that dude's like, come on. So Jazz fans are the worst. And they used to be the best. And I started to see it deteriorate. And I was in the airport in New York flying home from Italy. This is a true story. This is a great story. And I'm waiting for my flight in Salt Lake. And there's a guy there. He's standing there. He sticks out like a sore thumb. And so I go and strike a conversation with him. I says, "What's a guy like you do? What are you flying to Salt Lake for?" He says, "I play for the Jazz." "Play for the Jazz? Who are you?" And he says, "No, I just got drafted. I got drafted this year. I'm Donovan Mitchell." "Oh, I remember you in New York." Because I live in New York. I'm a basketball guy. And I remember your high school career. I really kind of lost track of him at Louisville. And I told him right to his face, you can go ask him. The fans are racist. Do you remember the game in 2017 when the Warriors swept the Jazz in the first round and Kevin Durant and those punks are on the front row chirping to Kevin Durant, and you can see Kevin Durant go back, and Durant scored like the last 17 points? Donovan Mitchell told me to my face, "Don't feed the lion." And I'm like, don't feed the lion. Amen. And so Donovan learned the old-fashioned way. I go ask Chris Paul if you know. Now, this is another thing. People don't realize how. Did you know the Jazz passed on Chris Paul? And remember all that with his brother in the stands? And then Chris Paul, you should just light the Jazz up. It's like Damian Lillard. I'm sitting right here. Excuse me. Got operated on yesterday. Waiting for the biopsy results. Pulled a couple tumors out of my guts. Went in. They got them. Had a bad night. Hurt. So, but it ain't open heart surgery. So I had leukemia, of course, when Lillard's playing here. I did the play-by-play for the radio station. So Frank Lade used to come to games because he'd swore off the Jazz. I talked to Phil Johnson and Baglin's freaking thing about the Jazz, and he's just so disgusted. I can't believe he never got his chance with the Jazz. So, Winks, we will pretend. Disgusting. It's all been downhill since they shot. I mean, that was it. So Frank Layden's sitting here. I used to say, hey, Frank, come on, do a little bit of color with us on the game. Once in a while, I'd come talk to him, and I'd interview him. For KWCR 88.1 The Beat, every time they got in trouble, well, we got to have some, I'll do it. You know, I always did it. So we're sitting there. Jimmer's all we heard. BYU, Jimmer. I'm like, you got a professional athlete right here. I personally knew. He'll be here Saturday. You know, he signed stuff, but not for very long. You got to get in line. But his alumni game, there are going to be a bunch of great players here. It's fun. It's exciting. And so he's sitting there, and he was going to get a play against Jimmer, but he broke his foot against, I believe it was Tulsa. And so he's in the booth. And we're sitting there, I'm talking to Frank. There's some scouts there, NBA scouts, which I know all, and there are morons. If you don't think they're morons, one word, Jarek Harding. Did you see him in the Summer League last year? Did you see him in Spain? You know what he would do in the NBA? Oh, he's NBA. I mean, he's the best player I ever saw here. Undrafted. Oh, he's always 6 foot. He'd go under those guys and destroy those big. I mean, they're too tall. So you need shorter guys to go under them. You take a guy like Jarek Hart, he would rip the NBA up right now because it's a cookie cutter 6'6", 6'9" league. It's pathetic. I can't stand it. You know, how about the call when he kicks it? You know, and they even look at it. Don't even get me going on the NBA. It's a sports merchandising league, and I've told Willard that right to his face. Not those little slaves in the bunkers and Bangladesh, fingers getting sore, making all your gear. I've told him that. It's online right to his face. So, it's so pathetic. So Frank, I'm talking to him, and here comes these scouts. And they're like, Frank's like, what are you doing here? You know, he knew who they were, Jazz. I knew who they were. We're scouting a player. He said, a player. Who are you scouting? I told him. Oh, and he rattled off this player. I believe it was Eastern Washington. It could have been somebody. I can't remember who they were playing. A good player. And Damian Lillard's sitting right there. And I looked at the scout, and Frank's like, oh, okay. I says, your NBA player's sitting right there. And the scout laughed. Damian heard it. There's no doubt. I mean, I know that dude's got a mind like a trap. I mean, he's a beast. And I'm not a fan of what he's done with his career and his money after. You know, my billions, I'm really not a fan. And so, Frank's like, to me, that dude's pathetic, he said, the scout. I says, all these scouts are pathetic. You don't think they're pathetic? Worse in the NFL. Oh, they're pathetic. One word, Rashid Shaheed. I know Rashid personally and Jarek Hart. They're both on the campus. The best football player and the best basketball player who ever played on this university. You know, since Swat Masaka, who's that? Since Byron Russell's dad, who's that? So, since Willie Soldier and daughter Jane, who's that? Neither one drafted. Oh, Wings, we will pretend. So Frank's like, the Jazz are pathetic. I said, you ain't telling me nothing. I had season tickets where I never missed a game till 2000. You know, when they started jacking up beer prices at $1 every year, to where I think they're like $17 now. The product's pathetic. It's turned into an elitist good, but for all you young athletes, this is the greatest performance by an athlete since Jim Thorpe, Michael Jordan. Game 6, Salt Lake City, in the Delta Center, June 14th, 1998, 25 years ago today. Same day Metallica played on the football field there in 4 in the afternoon. It's over. I knew it was over. When he hit the shot, I wish I'd have gathered up more tickets. I always had my ticket. I bought the plaque. I bought a hand-painted ball. So we knew it. Jerry was telling everybody he was going to get rich. Well, nice birdie, Bulls. Nice birdie, Bulls. Oh, it's a beautiful... Chris Farley on Balco. You know, going to live on a steady diet of government cheese and live in a van by the river. Oh, boy, on Balco, 98. You know, countrywide basketball metaphors matter. So, don't miss. Got to go with that left, Jerry. So, don't miss, Jordan. The greatest performance by an athlete since 1912, Jim Thorpe. 25 years ago today, Michael Jordan, he had 45 in that game. They only scored 87. And next time Scottie Pippen runs his mouth, throw that game in his face. He was a zero bird, didn't play most of it. Had back spasms. Michael Jordan always played. Stay tuned.